help people as well. And
That's
I
great.
believe you can turn that on yourself. There's a little button. But let's get started because we only have an hour with each other today. So, and there's a lot of information. So I am going to share my screen. I'm going to admit all these people. I'm going to share my screen, and in full transparency, I'm not going to go into presenter mode because sometimes when I go into presenter mode, I then lose everybody and it's hard for me to see everybody. So we're just going to stay in this mode so that you can, but we're going to go here first so that I can see people and I can manage the chat and all of that fun stuff. Okay. So first and foremost, welcome everybody. This is the last webinar in the series that I have been doing this year as the fellow in the Teaching and Learning Center that has been building out the Faculty Student Wellbeing Initiative. And today's workshop webinar is on intentional energies, setting ourselves up for aligned success. I'll give a little more background on who I am in a little bit. But before we do that, my name is Stephanie Simpson and I go by she, her pronouns. So before we get into that, I would love to first do a little grounding practice and then we'll get into introductions about myself. We're gonna do a little grounding in the chat as well. And then the main part of today's webinar is all about core energy leadership. So I'll discuss what that is. And then we're gonna break down all the different levels. And then we will talk about integration, and at that point we'll probably be on our way to 2:45. So let's first, and if you want to turn off your cameras for this, that's totally okay. We're going to do what I call 360 breathing. So if you want to just ground yourself first, notice what parts of your body are being supported by another surface. And first, just bring your awareness to your breath. No need to shift the breath right now. Just bring your awareness there. And now we're going to shift into a practice called 360 breathing. And we're going to think about our breathing in 3 different ways. First, we're going to think about the length of our breath. So as we inhale through the nose, we're going to start from our belly and inhale all the way up to our spine, to the crown of our head. And then keeping that internal shaping, that internal length, exhale out the mouth. Let's do that again. So inhaling, starting with your belly, in through the nose, all the way up the spine to the crown of your head, feeling that length that you've just created in the body, maintaining that internal shaping as you exhale out the mouth. For this next one, I invite you to bring your hands on the side of your ribs if that feels comfortable. We're going to think about breathing into the width of our breath. So thinking about the sides of our body, the sides of our rib cage. And as you inhale, really expanding in that rib cage to the side and feeling your breath fill up your hands if they're on the side of your ribs. And then as you exhale, those hands coming towards each other. And we'll do that again. Inhale, expanding into the side body. And exhale, releasing, letting the hands come towards each other. And then our third intention is to put a hand, one in the back of our rib cage and one in the front on our chest area. And if you can't do the hand on the back, that's okay. You can place the hand on the chest, the heart center. And we're going to think about the depth of our breath. So as we inhale, we want to inhale both forward and back in the same capacity. And then as we exhale, we release, coming back together. Notice if you're inhaling more to the front hand or the back hand, and see if you can balance between the two. Inhaling again. And exhaling, coming down. Releasing the hands, we're going to put all of that together. So we're going to think inhale length, width, and depth. And then we're going to exhale length, width, and depth while maintaining that internal shape that we feel on the inhale. So starting with the inhale, we think length, width, depth, and pause. And then exhale length, width, depth, all the way out. We'll do that one more time. Inhale length, width, depth, and pause. And exhale depth, width, length, and out. Take a moment to just notice and observe. And when you're ready, opening your eyes, coming back to the space here. So I am going to stop sharing for a moment, and I'm going to ask you all to set an intention for yourself for today's session. And if you can write that in the chat. So please write just anything, just your intention for being here, what you'd like to get from today's session. And I will share mine as well. So we have anything to improve my energy, use as a win for me. I wrote to hold space and offer a framework, strategies to manage stress and become more productive, wholeness and courage, have a sense of balance. These are great. I think you'll find a lot of your intentions will hopefully be met. Intention is to make space to reconnect with my research on well-being and education. Oh, I love that. Increase concentration. Intentions to learn how to increase energy and relax from stress. Awesome. If you have questions throughout, feel free to put them in the chat, or you can unmute. If it's something that I feel we're going to get to at some point, I'll ask that if we just put a pin in that and that I will address it later. If it's something that works with where we're at right then, I will address it in the moment, and hopefully at the end of the time we have together, we'll also have some time for question and answer. And then we have last one here, increase energy and memory. Oh, I like that. Okay, let's go back to here. All righty. So I think what I'm gonna do, well, I thought that this went, hold on one second. I thought there was a way to, well, here we are. Okay, so let's go a little bit about me. I won't spend a ton of time talking about who I am. If the slide wants to change, there we go. So again, my name is Stephanie. I go by she, her pronouns. I think of myself in these three different areas. One is as an artist. I come to this work as a performer, director, choreographer. Before being at John Jay in the capacity that I am now, I was the I built the dance and musical theater program at a private school here in New York City. I have my MFA in dance performance and choreography, and it was during that thesis research that I really got interested in the mind-body connection, specifically as it relates to peak performance and our relationship with fear. I also think of myself as an educator and facilitator. So like I said, I was working at an independent private school here in New York City. I still work with them as their coaching consultant. And here I teach at John Jay both stress management and yoga, as well as being a part of the teaching and learning team. I'm also, I teach all over the place and facilitate for a lot of businesses and organizations, ranging from nonprofit to startup to tech to finance to law. I'm also a trained and certified yoga teacher. And then finally, I look at myself also as a coach and a consultant. So I also have my master's in clinical psychology with an emphasis in spirituality, mind, body, and a focus in organizational psychology from Columbia University Teachers College. I'm an ACC ICF certified professional coach through a school called IPEC, which our program is based on the core energy leadership framework, which is what we're going to be talking about today. And in my work with both IPEC and at Columbia, I really focused on stress and stress management, both at the individual level and the group and organizational level. So I do a lot of work on stress management, embodied and conscious leadership, peak performance, and transition and just wellness in general. And so I have my own coaching and consulting business where I do work with businesses, organizations, and individual in this holistic mind, body, spirit way. So let's jump into what is energy leadership. So at the very basis, it's a framework to understand these 7 levels of energy. And I will put a little asterisk here in saying, if the word energy right now is not resonating with you, that is totally okay and totally understandable. You can substitute energy to be perspective or lens. Right? So we're going to be looking at these 7 different levels as 7 different types of ways that we can look both internally and externally. And what this framework does, it empowers us to understand how these energies or these perspectives are showing up in our lives currently, and then how are they supporting us to get to where we want to be, and maybe how they're not supporting us. So one of the things I love to say with clients, and there is an assessment that goes along with this that assesses where you're at on all these different levels, both in your everyday, like every day is this day is going well for you, as well as when you're in your stress cycle. And we'll talk a little bit about that later, is that how we access these energy levels has gotten us where we are now, though they may not be what we need to go to where we want to be in the future. And so the more awareness that we can have of how we're showing up in situations, then there's more choice for us to be able to say, do I want to choose to continue showing up in this way, or do I want to shift something? And with more choice always comes more power. And so what we're going to be talking about in terms of these different levels are catabolic energy and anabolic energy. And I'll get into more detail what those are in a little bit. Just know that this framework, which was created by Bruce Schneider, the founder of IPEC, catabolic and anabolic is not made up by him. We have catabolic hormones and we have anabolic hormones, and they do different things to our physical system. I mentioned that there's an assessment. It's called the Energy Leadership Index Assessment, also known as the ELI. And it measures, like I said, how you're currently accessing the 7 levels of energy on a regular basis and during your stress reaction. How long you stay in your stress reaction is totally dependent on what the stressor is, how you've engaged with that in the past, what resources you have around you. So I've been working with this framework in my own life for many years now. And I just noticed that if I don't get enough sleep, things stress me out in a different way, right? And so, I may be in my stress cycle a little longer if I haven't gotten enough sleep, but being able to recognize that and then be able to honor that and say, okay, so then what do I need to do right now in order to have more self-compassion that I didn't get enough sleep and everything like that, allows me to move through the stress cycle in a more conscious way. So before we get into what the different energies are, let's talk about this energetic self-perception chart. And it's not the greatest visual right now like this way, but I will explain it and then it comes in a different form later. But what's really helpful about this is we're taking things like lenses and perspectives and energies, and that can feel really intangible. And this chart helps us to kind of see it in a little more of a visual, tangible way. And so you'll see here in the center, you have the 7 different levels. Some people notice that these levels, the colors are associated also with the rainbow and maybe the chakra system. If you're aware of the chakra system and know that about that, supposedly Bruce did not do that on purpose, but these were the colors that came to him. So we start here all the way at level 1 with the red, and that's really in this inner circle, the self. Level 1 and level 2, which are associated with more catabolic energy, are really in this like kind of tunnel vision of the self. As we continue out towards self-mastery, we move into like levels 3, 4, and 5. And when we get into self-transcendence, we get into levels 6 and 7. You'll also notice that for every level, there's a core thought, a core emotion or feeling, and a core action and result. And what I love about that is there's not just one way to understand what level you're in, and there's not just one way to help shift yourself from a different level. You may be aware that you're acting in a certain way, and that give you more language as to how you're feeling or what you're thinking. You may realize that you have a repeating thought that's going on in your head and be like, okay, is this serving me? Is it not? Where would this go in terms of, energy leadership? Where do I want to be? And I always tell people, emotions are just energy in motion. And so really being able to acknowledge our emotions, validate them, articulate them, and get them out of us helps to keep them in flow as opposed to keeping them stuck. So you'll notice when we start talking about levels 1 and level 2, a lot of times those come out internally first, and it's a place where we feel stuck a lot of times. And so how are we getting that energy moving again so we can work our way up to more anabolic states? So let's talk about catabolic energy. So catabolic energy, like I said, he did not make this up. It is based around catabolic hormones. They're associated with stress and the stress cycle. So fight, flight, or freeze. When we are in that stress cycle, what ends up happening is our body sends out the alarm, our nervous system ends up shutting things down everywhere else, because all we want, and using like cortisol and adrenaline and everything, so that all we can do is get to safety, whether that's running away, fighting back, or freezing. When we're in that tunnel vision, we only see that one thing, right? So we don't see a lot of options. So we're very one focus, which can stop us from seeing other options around us that can maybe be more beneficial to us. Also, if we're continuously in this cycle and we're not trying to release it or shift it, the cortisol and the adrenaline are tearing down our systems, and it's actually weakening our immune system. So that then can show up in us feeling fatigue or overwhelm or anything like that. Yes, Chelsea, we are going to get to each of the levels in a little bit. That was just kind of to see that there's 3 different ways to use them. But yes, we will get to each level in its own time soon. You're welcome. And so if we're stuck in these catabolic hormones too much, it can lead to frustration, overwhelm, disengagement, and after a while, burnout. So stress, and I actually did a whole other webinar on stress that you can find on the TLC website. We actually don't want to get rid of stress. We need a certain amount of stress, though if we're not managing our stress properly and effectively, it can lead to burnout. So the other type of energy we have is anabolic energy. And anabolic energy associated with less stress, it's the idea of building up force. So instead of the tearing down, this one's building up. And here's where our anabolic hormones are being released. And when those are being released, we're optimizing our systems. And when we're optimizing our systems, we're able to tap into our creativity. We're able to see more opportunities and solutions, our critical thinking skills, all of that. And so when we're doing more of that, thinking creatively, seeing options and opportunities, trying different things, then we're fostering more engagement in our own life. And as leaders, if we are using this framework to lead a team, it's helping to foster engagement with them, more flow, like I was saying, that the emotions and the energy are moving, and therefore more happiness, enjoyment, satisfaction. So now we're going to get into each level. So as I said, as people were trickling in, with each level, I'm going to go over the core thought, the core emotion, the core feeling. I'm also going to talk about the advantages and disadvantages. So many people, when they first hear about this, they're like, well, of course, I don't want to be in catabolic states at any point. And that's not necessarily true. Energy is neither good nor bad, positive nor negative. We attach meaning to these emotions and to the energy. Also, energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It just can be shifted, right? So this framework is about understanding what energy level, what perspective we're currently in, and where would we like to be. And sometimes it's that same level. That's what we need. And that's great, right? Because we're getting to choose it. You also, the energy levels, there's interplays between them. So even though we may have one that's dominant in a certain situation, we're still having access to all the other ones. So when this gets when you understand it a little more, you start realizing like, oh, how can I pair like 3 and 6, or 4 and 5? And that might make a little more sense as we go through it. Though for today, since it's new to all of you, just kind of understanding the differences between the levels, and when they are working towards your advantage and when they may be disadvantaging you, is really my intention for you today. So level 1, and you'll notice that for each level, I have a fun Disney character associated with them. So level 1, I associate with Eeyore. So this is what we call the victim level. It's the lowest level of energy. And so therefore it's associated with the highest levels of judgment, stress, and catabolic energy. Some core thoughts around this. It may be like, I never win. Why is this happening to me? I never win when nothing ever works out for me. I'm feeling really stuck. Another kind of analogy, or not analogy, but grounding framework I will give is this idea of winning and losing. So level 1 is I never win. Of course, I never win, sort of thing. And some of the emotions and feelings that may come out of those thoughts are fear, worry, self-doubt, guilt, apathy, embarrassment. And because of that, some of the actions that might come out of it is anxiety, lethargy, hopelessness, feeling low self-esteem, focusing on the me, but like a numbness of the focus mentally and emotionally, and then disengagement. So this one could look like freeze in some ways. It could also look like flight, right? In our fight, flight, or freeze of like running away from the problem and then actually just getting completely numb and disengaging. And so, like I said, there's advantages and disadvantages to everything. So the advantage of level 1 is to protect us from experiencing uncomfortable situations. If we are in a situation that's maybe activating us a lot, we might go to our level 1 because it's numb and distance and disengage. And that's actually protecting us from being re-triggered maybe by something. It can also draw sympathy from others. So losing a job, or breaking up with someone, or some big thing, right? I mean, even I think, it's hard not to think about COVID all the time, like just being there for people at different stages of this whole COVID experience that we've all been with is like, a lot of times I find myself in level 1, right? And so having friends who can reach out and see if I'm okay and all of that. The disadvantage is if we get stuck here, it can prevent us from taking action, right? And really engaging in our life. And so that can then impact our satisfaction and overall fulfillment. I work with a lot of career transitioners in my private practice, and the job market is challenging right now in many different ways, and trying to get a job is not always easy. And so a lot of times, with rejection, we go into level 1. Oh, I'm never going to get a job again. Like, why didn't they like me? It's because I don't have this. It's because I don't have this. And so a lot of my job is acknowledging and validating that, not telling them to not feel that way, because it's really important that they do feel that rejection and allow it to process. Though also supporting them that they don't get stuck in that they then aren't active and proactive to be like, okay, well, what did you learn from that last interview experience that we can then bring into your interviews going forward? So I invite you right now to take a moment to pause and think about, when does level 1 energy show up for you? So I just gave the example of, being rejected for a possible job opportunity. Know that these can happen internally and externally, all these different levels. One of the ways that this also comes up for me is when I send emails out to people. I'm a lot better at it now, but when I send emails to people and I don't get a response right away, especially if it's something that's really important to me, I then start worrying that I said something in the email that's bothersome to the person. And then my brain kind of gets hijacked and I'm like, oh, they don't think I'm good enough, all that sort of stuff. And so the self-doubt and the worry and the fear come up. So I invite you, as you're thinking about how level 1 shows up for you, if you want to write it in the chat, you can also unmute and share before we move on to level 2. And just a reminder for anybody who joined us late, this is being recorded. So whatever you share, just know that it will be recorded. All right, we'll move on to level 2. Feel free to always add things in the chat if it comes up as you're reflecting on all this. So as we move, oh, here we go. So unverified dissatisfaction with teaching results. Yeah. Current events, I can't watch or listen to the news. Yes, that is a big one. Relationships, work, sending text messages. Yeah, totally. So, you know, this idea, if we're a lot of times in level 1, I notice for myself, it's when I'm trying to get validation from the outside. And so when we get to level 4, a lot of the work is how can I validate myself and show self-compassion. Jessica, I really appreciate this about the news and everything like that. It can feel really heavy on us, right? And so that's where like boundaries, like self-care boundaries come along of like, how much am I actually watching and taking in? Great sharings, everybody. So as we move up the framework, we come to level 2. So this is the fighter. So I think of Scar from Lion King. And in the fighter, we're still really associated with high levels of judgment and stress and catabolic energy. Though the energy is moving a little more, it's a little more active. This one, the core thoughts are, I win, you lose. So like that idea that Scar feels like he can't share, you know, the power with his brother. He needs to have all of it. And he needs, not only does he need all of it, he needs his brother to lose, right? So this also shows up thinking like, I need to defend myself. I need to stick up for myself, and a lot of binary thinking. So, you know, either left or right or wrong, this or that. And so the emotions that come up with this, a lot of conflict, a lot of anger, maybe resentment for ourselves and others, some greed, territorialness comes up here, and blame. And the blame can be both internal and external. A lot of times the blame we feel internally ends up being projected externally onto other people. And so some of the actions that might happen, disappointment, frustration, struggle, pressure, defiance, not wanting to do something, having a difficulty letting go. This is very emotional state as opposed to mental state, struggling a lot. And this is really where high stress lives and burnout. Unfortunately, when I work with teams and groups on this, this is where a lot of teams are really high, is in, especially in their stress cycle. And that's because we work in pressure cookers, a lot of us, and this idea of what does productivity look like? What does success look like? And we put all these demands and all these pressures, which at times the advantage of this is that we can work well under pressure. Some of us, that is when we kind of hunker down and get things done. However, as we learn about stress and the stress cycle, if we're doing that all the time, it is not sustainable. And that's where we have long-term effects like burnout and disengagement and just physical illness too. If a leader is leading this way, there's going to be a lot of territorialness in their team. There's going to be distrust. There's not going to be safety. And there's going to probably be a lot of unhappy workers there. So thinking about level 2, when does you can either just think of how does level 2 show up in your life? You can also think of like, when does it show up in a way that serves you? And when does it show up in a way that doesn't serve you? I'll say for this level, I notice, and this is somewhat of a generalization, when I'm working with women clients, we actually have to do a lot of work around level 2 and allowing them to feel the anger and actually be okay with being angry so that it doesn't come out in a different way. And so in coaching sessions, allowing them to feel the anger, letting the anger come up, feeling what that feels like, and then allowing it to shift away and maybe continuing to hold that fire inside of them in that level 2 way, but being conscious about it so that when they go to present something to a manager or a boss, they're doing it from a different level. I usually try to get them to do it from a level 5, as opposed to doing it from a, I need to fight for myself and it needs to be my way or no way sort of thing, because that's not what a lot of people want in terms of collaboration and connection. Yeah, group activities and teaching needs an acute awareness of level 2. Yes, groups are, I mean, group work is so challenging. It's actually the final project for my stress management class is to do a group project. And every student at some point is like, they stress me out. Groups stress me out. And I'm like, I know, it's one of the reasons it's your final project, is to see whether you could take everything we learned over the semester and implement it while working with a group. Because guess what? We all have to work with groups at different times. I used this framework with a team a few months ago that I was coaching, and it really helped the team to be able to communicate with each other more. So when they were coming to a meeting, and it was a diversity, equity, inclusion team within an educational institution. So they all have other jobs within the institution. And they found when they would come to their meetings, they would feel really overwhelmed and burnt out and everything like that. And so their meetings weren't as productive. And so training them on this and having them all get their own ELI and then their team ELI, I was saying to them, what can be really productive is, as a group check-in when you start your meetings, is where are you right now in terms of the levels of energy? And if someone says, I'm at a level 2, it's so much easier to be like, oh, so Gina's at a level 2. She's not like mad at me, right? She's just feeling really level 2. I can then, as maybe the person facilitating that meeting, say, you know, what support do you need from us right now, which is actually very level 4. And so now we're having a dialogue and a communication, as opposed to not checking in at all, not having a language to name how we're showing up, maybe not even having an awareness that you're showing up like that. And then this meeting goes on and everyone is coming from different places, and they're assuming that someone doesn't like them or their idea because of the way they're looking. And now we're creating unnecessary conflict and stress. Awesome. I'm glad that this is possibly a helpful tool as you continue to navigate things on campus. Let's move to level 3. So level 3 is an interesting level because it is part catabolic and part anabolic, but more on the anabolic side. So it's really that bridge. And this can be a really powerful, I mean, they're all powerful, but this can be a really powerful level when using it consciously, or at least being able to recognize when we're using it consciously and unconsciously. So here we're thinking in terms of that win, we're still thinking I win, though we also want the other person to win or the team to win as well. In this one, we're taking responsibility for our feelings and our emotions, and we're trying to find the silver lining. So one of the ways to shift from level 1 and 2 to 3, and we're not always looking to go up chronologically. That's not necessarily what we're trying to do. We're trying to be more aware of how we're showing up currently and how we'd like to show up, right? So if we're in level 1, in that, like, oh my gosh, everything always happens to me that's bad, like I never win, blah, 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 all this sort of stuff. And it's like the woe is me, Eeyore, right? Once I get awareness that that's happening, I can stop and say, okay, what in this situation can I take responsibility for? That's level 3, right? So I didn't even need to get to the angry part or the frustration part. I could actually stop there and go, what am I willing to take responsibility for? And then get clear on that. And then maybe be like, okay, so now that I know that, what action can I take from here? So that would be consciously using level 3. Some emotions that come up here: relief, forgiveness, just release in general. Here's where we're really trying to figure out how to, in the moment, navigate stress. In the moment, put it to the side so we can focus on getting to the end goal. So in teams and groups, this is where the cooperation comes in. So maybe you're working with a group that not everybody gets along, but you have an end goal. You all are bought into the end goal. Great. How can we put our differences aside? How can we cooperate? How can we engage our coping mechanisms? How can we tolerate what's going on so we can get to that end goal? Now, where this can become a disadvantage, right? So the advantage is that we're moving past judgments and the fear and the negativity in the moment so that we can remain present on the goal and get to the end goal. The disadvantage is if we're not then circling back to what are those things and those obstacles that we needed to put to the side, how are we addressing those? How are we going to make sure that that doesn't happen later, right? This is where so many people are like, well, I don't like conflict. And I was like, and I always say, conflict is not a bad thing. I think you're thinking about confrontation. And the more that you avoid conflict, you're going to get the thing you don't want, which is confrontation. So how can we look at conflict as a way to bring us together and create more trust and safety by taking responsibility for all of our feelings individually and asking each other, what could we do better in the future? What do we need to release? What do we need to forgive in ourselves and others? The other way that this can become disadvantage is when we are justifying too much or rationalizing too much or tolerating too much. And then we get to this like settling thing as things are just good enough. And that will bring us back to level 1 and 2. So when I'm working with people who want to transition out of a career into a new career or just feel really stuck in their life, a lot of times it's because they're in this level 3. They're like, well, I make really good money and I guess the job is easy. So like, do I really want to change that? And a lot of that has to do with fear, right? Because at least they know what that is. However, they're working for an organization that doesn't align with their values. Their boss doesn't value them. They're not being seen and recognized and heard. And so really they're all in level 1 and level 2 energy all the time. And I think what we all learned through COVID and hopefully continue to remember is that how we are at work and what's affecting us at work will affect our personal relationships with family, friends, significant others, all of that. And vice versa. What's going on in our personal life is going to affect how we show up for our job. We are not 2 different people. We are one person. And so this framework works in all areas of our life. This actual level is actually where really good managers have a high level 3. To be a really effective manager, you need to be able to put differences aside, see the end goal, see the potential in everybody, see the silver lining, see the good in everybody so that you can get them to that finish line, right? So that's another place where level 3 is really helpful and important. So I invite you now to think about where in your life is level 3 serving you and where in your life is energy level 3 holding you back. And the reason I have Snow White here is that she's really good at managing all the 7 dwarfs. And yet she's kind of like, oh, is there anything more in my life? She's just kind of like going through things. She's kind of settling. This is kind of good enough. So she's really good at managing things. So she kind of embodies both sides of it. In the interest of time, we're going to keep moving on, but feel free to share in the chat as people can kind of read what you're writing. And it's always helpful to know that we're not alone in how things are showing up in our life. Acknowledging talent and quality in associates. That is such an important skill and talent to have. And that is definitely level 3. And then I would say acknowledging that with level 3 and then sharing it outwardly is like a level 4, and then finding ways to do it in a level 5, which we'll get to with soon. Dealing with students. Yes. I mean, this is one of those where I would say, because I'm going to say for most of us in education, level 4 is the one that we're going to get to, is probably one of our dominant levels in our regular chart. And also why we experience such burnout is because, as you will find out, if we don't have good boundaries and healthy boundaries in a level 4, we very quickly go down to level 1 and 2. So being able to consciously and intentionally use level 3 can really help us to not take on what's going on with our students and be able to kind of manage things in the moment and then release it. Yeah, being a caretaker. And Mark, I appreciate you sharing that. And I think that level 4 is also going to resonate with you in terms of, you know, wanting to be that caretaker and coming from a place of love and service, though not enough energy for yourself, right? And so trying to find new ways to shift maybe a boundary around that. So let's move to level 4, the caregiver. And I have Belle from Beauty and the Beast here, because Belle taking care of her dad, And then also taking care of the beast, who's her captor for half the movie, right? So everything in level 4, it is higher. It's a moderate in anabolic energy. Everything here is concern for others. How can I help? How can I be of support? You win. I love you. I don't need to win. It's all about you. It's a wonderful place because we're coming from a place of compassion and gratitude and trust, conditional love, which we'll talk about later, and caring. The actions are service and playfulness and problem solving, and self-care is the important part here. This is where we tend to a lot of times not do that part because we're so actively doing it outwards to everybody else, which means our sympathetic nervous system is always on high alert as opposed to our parasympathetic nervous system. Here, we're not taking anything really personally because we just want to serve others. I will say that the last time I took this assessment, I was tied for 4-6, so 4 tends to be my dominant. And a lot of times in level 4 with the caregiver, the caretaker, we get a lot of our self-esteem from helping others. And so dialing back the level 4 and that identity of being a problem solver and a caretaker can actually feel a little scary, because then it becomes, well, then who's going to like me? That's how I get my esteem. That's who I am. Right. And so like the advantages are good. Like we're being of service. We're giving back to the world. We're making a difference. Where there's a disadvantage to it is that if we're not establishing healthy boundaries and maintaining those boundaries, and we're not practicing self-care, then what ends up happening here is level 4 people tend to put others people first, and then they can feel overwhelmed, which leads to level 1, and then frustrated, which leads to level 2 when they feel out of balance. So this is really that compassion fatigue. I see this a lot with educators and mental health providers, coaches, and just healthcare workers and everything like that. Is yes, we want to be of service. Yes, we want to do this. And there's so much actually being asked of us. And rarely are we given space to do that for ourselves. And rarely do we allow ourselves to do that, right? We also tend to be, and I say we because I put myself in this category because it is my dominant energy. I know for me, I tend to do more work in my relationships. And then I get frustrated that the other person isn't doing work, which is level 2. And then I get to the woe is me phase of like, why does this always happen to me? Why does no one ever reach out to me? Why am I always the one holding space and taking care of others? And a lot of times it's because I am doing more of the work. I am helping them problem solve. I am giving them advice. Where coaching has become such a wonderful tool for me, not just what I do for a living, is realizing that I don't need to give people advice. I don't need to solve their problem. I can hold space for them by just asking a really powerful question or just listening to them. And then actually that leans more into my level 4 because I'm helping them to figure out how to solve their own problem. So taking a moment here to think about what would be the benefit of leaning more into level 4, and what would be the benefit of decreasing your level 4 energy in certain areas of your life. And as you're thinking about that, I will also say that high anabolic leaders, ones that are really resonating high in that level 5, level 6, it's not that they have a low level 4. They actually have a pretty high level 4. It just isn't their highest because they figured out these boundaries. They figured out how to not take things personally. They figured out how to restore and rejuvenate and rest so that they can continuously access the level 5 and 6, which we're going to get into right now. Yeah, Mark, less resentment. Yeah. And so when I think about resentments, and this is actually comes from AA, which I am not a part of, but I know different people have gone through the program, is that they talk about expectations are resentments waiting to happen, right? So we can set a bar for people, though holding on to the expectation that they have to do that, and that if they don't, it's some sort of reflection on ourselves, that creates some resentment. right? So if we're really thinking, and now I'm getting into my yogi philosophy, if we're really thinking about non-attachment of setting a bar, stating a need, stating a want, and then not attaching to how people will respond or not respond to that, that's what releases the suffering. And that's what releases resentment. And that is really hard to do as human beings. Though it's hopefully what we're working towards. And what we talked about duality, which is really big in level 2, is that duality of like, this is the right answer, this is the wrong answer, right? So this is the right way to respond to me, this is the wrong way to respond to me, or all of that. When we get up to level 5, that's when the duality doesn't exist anymore. So level 4 is starting to get to that place. So level 5, and level 5 here, I have Woody from Toy Story. And I actually watched Toy Story a few months ago and realized that when he is not in his stress cycle, he is a great level 5, a great collaborator. And if you're familiar with Toy Story 1, he is in that space for maybe 15 minutes. And then as soon as Buzz comes around, he gets activated into his fight, flight, or freeze, because he now is no longer the number 1 toy. And then he is not in level 5 very much for very much of the movie, until something else happens where both Buzz and him have to work together. And then all of a sudden they do get back to that level 5 sort of place. So level 5, high in anabolic energy. This is used by many effective leaders. In this place, like I said, you're no longer seeing things as binary. You're also not seeing them as problems, right? So maybe when in level 2, you're seeing things as like a challenge. Maybe even level 3, you're seeing it as a challenge, you're seeing it as a problem more so, I guess, in level 2. Level 3 is starting to shift as a challenge. Level 4 may be a challenge, like let me help you solve your challenge and your problem. I get excitement from that. Level 5 doesn't even see problems or challenges. They see everything as opportunities. Everything here is like growth mindset. If you're familiar with Carol Dweck's research on that, this is like, where's the opportunity here? Let's try this. Oh, it didn't quite work out the way we thought. That's okay. What did we learn from here? What are we going to then take to bring into the next choice we decide to do, the next opportunity? In this place, we both win. So it's not about me or you winning. We're both winning in this situation. This is where I really, when I'm coaching and consulting people on salary negotiation, I really have them come into that conversation, setting up a win-win situation. Look at the value I'm adding. Look at how that's helped our team grow or our revenue grow. Here's how you can also continue to see me grow by supporting me in X, Y, and Z. And maybe that's more salary, maybe that's more time off, that's maybe whatever, right? So creating these win-win situations. The emotions here, confidence, a peace, a calmness, just really that grounded centeredness in who you are, and trust and faith that that everything is working out. This is a little more mental of a state where we're trying to find the meaning in things, right? So we're bringing people together and finding ways that they can work together and be solution focused and purpose driven, accepting everything that's going on around us and the people around us, and like, great, this is awesome. What can we do from here? So advantages here, you're able to generate a lot of ideas because you're seeing solutions and opportunities everywhere. And you also fully believe that there's a purpose in every situation, that even a setback or a rejection is a thing that you can learn from. That kind of idea is like rejection is just redirection, right? Like level 5 people would definitely believe that, right? I wasn't rejected, I was just redirected. And they really don't take things personally. Now, where this can have a disadvantage is because you're seeing so many opportunities, you may encounter what's called paralysis by analysis. Because remember, this is a little more mental of like, what does this mean? How does this mean? Blah, blah, blah. And so I can definitely attest that this happens to me at times where I'm like, well, I have this and I have this and I have this and I have this. And I'm like, oh, this could be this and this could be that and that could be this and that could be, and then I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what to do first. Right. And then I become overwhelmed. And then I'm like, oh gosh. Right. And so in that moment, actually engaging my level 3 and breathing, and then asking myself, what do I want? What do I need right now? What makes me most excited, which is really level 4. And then going towards that one can help me to kind of like When I dip out of level 5, come back to level 5. They also may seem disengaged from their emotions because they're thinking about everything like analytically and analyzing things. And then therefore they may take too many risks because they're really optimistic about stuff. So I am, in the interest of time, I do want you to think about this, like where in your life could you use more level 5 energy? And feel free to write that in the chat. Also, one of the reasons that we record this is that you can then come back to this, and I will also download this this presentation, and we can send this out to you as a PDF so that you have it for yourself. So we're going to move on to level 6. So level 6, incredibly high in anabolic energy. This is Olaf. Like Olaf, if you, and it's funny because right next to me on my couch, I have a stuffed animal of Olaf. He's one of my favorites and reminds me of how can we stay in this playful flow state? How can we find the joy in things? And so when we're here, we are really tapping into our consciousness, our intention, our intuition, our visions. Judgment is no longer present here. Everybody is always winning. So we're level 5, we're creating win-win situations and solutions that work for us in that moment. Level 6 believes that we're always winning. Everybody's always winning, maybe not at the same time, and that's okay. And that there's this connection, this connectivity, this synergy that I am you, you are me, I'm learning from you, you're learning from me. We're having this exchange, this flow. So there's a lot of joy. There's a lot of oneness, satisfaction, a fearlessness that like everything is working out as it should. There's a reason for everything, which is a little level 5, but in level 6, we're not trying to figure out what that reason is. We're just being in it. We're living in the moment. We're experiencing it. We're focusing on the whole. This is the area where we're really able to tap into our creativity. So we're creating new things. Leaders here, so really conscious leaders, and I work a lot in this idea of conscious leadership, are able to zoom out, be in this level 6, be really visionary, see the whole big picture, and then they're able to zoom in and maybe get into level 3 and be able to execute and action things, and also be able to zoom out to see, oh, my team needs a break. So how can I tap into level 4? And okay, wait, we really need to get this done. And I do need to put a little pressure on my team to get this done by a certain deadline. So how can I use level 2 in a way that is conscious and effective without burning them out, right? So in level 6, the advantage is having that ability to feel and connect without judgment just allows us to create sustainable joy and satisfaction. Disadvantages, you may feel like you're floating. People may think you're floating, that you're not very grounded, that you're kind of just acting always on intuition and not necessarily with logic. And so there may be a lot of risk there. So in teams, what's so wonderful about this assessment and this framework is that with teams, you might be able to identify, and Dirk, maybe this is one of your superpowers, is be able to identify someone on your team that's really high level 6. And so when we're in the brainstorming phase, we're like, yeah, let's run with it. You facilitate this brainstorming phase, and then be able to identify someone who's really good at managing and executing and being like, great, now this person is going to take over. Because sometimes when we're so stuck in level 6, we don't get anything done because we just continue to vision and vision and vision. And so we do need some people who are a little more grounded, analytical, of like, great, I know how to project manage this and get this done. And so I invite you now to think about, how do you tap into your level 6 energy? So I know for me, being a dancer, I have solo dance parties in my apartment all the time, or just listen to music. I also love going for walks. Even taking a nap and resting are ways that I can tap into my level 6 energy. So, take some time to think about how you do that. Like, what are some ways that you do it? And then finally, we get to level 7. And level 7 is the Yoda, which I also have a Yoda stuffed animal. And Yoda, he is the guru. He is the higher power, the higher self, our highest coach, our best self, our, who we are in our best and wonderful days without any limitations. In this place, it's pure creation, complete non-judgment, and no human can stay in this level completely, right? Though with practice, we can access it and use it with the other levels. So where level 1 was, I never win, and level 2 was, I am definitely going to win and you're going to lose. And level 3 was, I'm going to win and then you can win as well. Level 4 being, no, you win. I don't need to win. I love you. I want you to win. Level 5 being, let's create a win-win so we both can win. Level 6 being, everybody's always winning. Level 7 is like, there is no winning and losing. It's all illusions. We just are, right? I don't know anything about cryptocurrency really, but I do bring it into my coaching sessions in the sense of when a lot of times the barrier that a lot of people have is money, right? I don't have enough. I don't have enough money. Well, money doesn't exist. It's an illusion. We made it up, right? And then people are like, no, we didn't. It's this, this, and this. And I'm like, well, I don't know. This cryptocurrency thing was made up and it's like not real and I don't understand it at all, but it's literally made up. And people are buying into it, right? So we have an actual tangible thing that we can say is like, yeah, none of it's real, right? However, if you're always going through life thinking nothing is real and that there is, like, you're gonna have like no drama in your life, you can really be looked at as like disconnected, right? And so almost to the point where, and this is where I would say spiritual bypassing happens a lot of times with people, is that you're not actually grounding in the human experience and can almost bring you all the way back to level 1 because then you're not actually recognizing and taking responsibility for certain things. So being conscious about when you're tapping into level 7, you know, when you have those like moments of genius, or, you know, you're practicing mindfulness or whatever it is that you do to help get you to that place of being and, you know, complete love for yourself and others. That's always great. And being able to be like, yes, I'm co-creating my life and really trying to embody that philosophy is wonderful. When we go too far into it that we're bypassing other things, that's when it can become a detriment. So again, like level 6, I invite you to think about how are you accessing your level 7. Some things I do practice many different forms of mindfulness. Even just talking to really trusted people. I have a really good friend where we leave each other voice notes. And it's really fun because it's like we're having our own podcast back and forth on our phones and we can listen to it on our own time, but listening to her can unlock so many other things for me. And then I share one back and it unlocks for her. And we're having this really like high level conversation, even though we're not on the phone together. I know we are very close to time. So what I'm going to do is just very briefly show you what this looks like when you take the assessment. This is what your like a chart would look like on your for an everyday you're in your good place. This is what it might look like if you're in your stress reaction. In full transparency, this is my chart from a year and a half, maybe even more. But we're not going to really spend time looking at that. What I do want you to think about is take a moment, and I can stay on for an extra like 5 to 10 minutes as well, though I totally understand if people need to jump, is to take a moment for yourself. And even if you just need to write these questions down, is think about what you learned today. What's a new insight you have about yourself because of this framework? And then how do you want to take that new learning and insight and turn it into some sort of action step? And that action step does not need to be like huge, right? It could literally be just, I'm going to journal every day, even if it's 3 sentences, right? Or I'm really going to commit to taking 5 minutes to myself every hour of the day, of the working day. You know, it can be something like that. It could be something a little bit bigger of like, maybe you're working on a big project and you got an idea that really is working towards that. Totally fine too. And then allow yourself to think like, what are you still curious about? And so with that, I'm going to stop the share. And if there are, and like I said, I know it's 2:45, so if you need to jump, totally do that. This will still be on the recording, I believe. So if there are any questions that people have that they want to ask the group right now, you can put in the chat or just unmute. And anything you want to share with the group. We'll leave some space for that right now.
Hi, this is Chelsea.
Hi, Chelsea.
Thank you for your presentation. I wanted to just give you a little summary and see if I got this all correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So my understanding from the levels is this represents how we use energy, and that if we are more conscious of these levels, then we can be more intentional in how we choose to use our energy.
Yes,
Is that a
Chelsea,
fair summary?
that is a more than fair summary. I wish I recorded that so that I could use it going forward. Yes, it is exactly that. It is all about whether you are aware of it or not, you're already using all these levels in different ways with different people, with different situations, both internally and externally. What this framework is doing is it's helping you to like tangibly be able to kind of say like, oh, I feel like I'm here. I feel like I'm here. I feel like I'm here. And then where do I want to be? Is that energy, that specific level, is that actually serving me right now? Or would a different level be more advantageous here or be more supportive here? And then how can I shift myself into that? And like I said at the beginning, when you get into more complexities of this, is like there's interplays, right? We're not just in one level all the time. So, how can I pair my level 2 and my level 5? How can I pair my level 3 and level 6? How can I create an offering that's really level 4, 6, that's when it gets even more exciting and playful, I guess is the word that keeps coming to mind. So yes, that is exactly right. And one thing I always say all the time in any presentation I'm doing is that with more awareness comes more choice, and with more choice comes more power, because we feel powerless when we don't feel like we have choice. So to create more power, we need to see more choices, though we won't see more choices and create more choices if we don't have more awareness. So Jill, the assessment, it is not a free assessment. So in order to do it, you have to do it with a trained master practitioner. And so I can totally give you more information about that. I am a master practitioner in the ELI, but it isn't one of those that you can just like go online like the Enneagram or anything like that. What I love about this, and like all those other assessments are great too, those are personality assessments. So you take it, they tell you kind of where you're at, and they give you like a profile of who you are. This is an attitudinal assessment. So it's showing you how you are right now. And then why it's so powerful with like coaching and like both with teams and individuals is that over a period of time, when you start working with it more and working with a coach or a consultant and being more intentional and all of that, you can take it again like 8 months later, and it shifts into it, and you can see your changes, right? And it's not necessarily all of, like I said before, about, oh, I got to get really high in level 5 and 6. Sometimes it's about actually honoring your level 2 more and using it more consciously. So if you do, I'm going to share my screen one more time so you can see my contact information. If you're interested in learning more about it, feel free to reach out to me. I also have a John Jay email, which I realize is not on here, but this is my website. You can also follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Stephanie Simpson Coaching. You can always find me on my website as well as through John Jay, and I can share more about that. Let's see. Oh, thank you, Gina. That's my John Jay email address. Yeah. Anything else before we leave? I know that was a lot in an hour. We sometimes make these a little longer, but we knew that the end of the semester, we all need more rest. So we went to an hour and 5. I really appreciate everybody spending the time with me today. Again, the recording will be up probably in like another week, maybe 2. Feel free to reach out. I'd love to support in any way I can. And the thing I always say to people is have fun with the framework, play with it, just kind of like at different times. Yes, I will also give the TLC the slides, and we'll make sure that those get out to people as well. Yeah, so the first thing I say to clients when they're first learning about this is just have fun with it, be curious about it. Maybe your action step is to set an alarm every day at a certain time to just check in and be like, where would I be right now on energy leadership? Am I 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? And where do I want to be? that maybe is your action step going forward. Awesome, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day and a smooth rest of the week, and that you have a smooth rest of the semester, and then definitely take some time to restore yourself. Thank you for that, Demi.